I think it's a very good time to leave because I'm going to say something horrible. Well, the main thing I want to say is perhaps human civilization is coming to an end.
Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So this is a lecture from Dr. Young Mae Chi titled The Aliens Are Here. So this is a presentation that will expand your mind on the realities of extraterrestrials. Now guys, if you're new to my material, please follow me on all my platforms, join me on my Facebook group, follow me on my Instagram, subscribe to my YouTube channel, purchase my latest book, Chaku's Adventure, which is available on Amazon. And if you'd love to make a donation to help create this movement and help improve the equipment, PayPal/Path2Transcendence. Now let's get going. So I know many of you can feel that this planet is going through a change, and this change could lead to a catastrophic event in our near future. Now this event or series of events are looming, and our time to make the right decision is closing. This change may not come in a way that we expect. It may manifest in a form that we didn't see coming. Now, this man over here is David M. Jacobs, and he's a retired associate professor of history at Temple University. And he wrote the book titled Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity. Yes, you heard me correctly, ladies and gentlemen. The alien plan to control humanity. Now, David Jacobs had a hypothesis that perhaps extraterrestrials could be looking to colonize the Earth. Now, this may sound strange to the average person, but there are many other people that detail the existence of aliens. It's not the first time extraterrestrials are said to exist. In fact, if you stretch far back into history, you'll find a whole range of information and research that backs this up. I mean, if you look at many ancient civilizations, they have detailed the existence of aliens. If you look at ancient Sumeria, and you look at their paintings on their walls, they have depicted sky gods coming down to our planet and genetically modifying their DNA to create us. This may not sound like something that's taught in the science classroom, because it probably isn't. Most human beings have no idea that extraterrestrials have been visiting this planet for a very, very long time. If you look at ancient Egypt, the hieroglyphics point towards some kind of extraterrestrial involvement. Some hieroglyphics demonstrate some understanding on the current technologies we use, like submarines and helicopters. Even the pyramids of Giza, they were built with such precision that it still baffles archaeologists today. We still cannot pinpoint exactly how these pyramids were built without some kind of advanced technology. In fact, some have even speculated that perhaps there was extraterrestrial involvement. Perhaps we utilize extraterrestrial technologies that are not yet known by the average individual. But I'm pretty sure that technology is out there, it's just not available to the general public. Now, this of course is really concerning, because then that begs the question, what is out there? What is really going on in our reality? Now, of course, discussions like this may expand your mind in a way that makes you uncomfortable. Many people have even claimed that aliens are demons, but I think this matter is more intricate and complex than that. We've become accustomed to the perception that human beings are the only intelligent force in the known universe. But this video will serve to expand your mind and expand your awareness on a reality that has been occurring right under our nose. Aliens are real, and they have been communicating with us even before the birth of human civilization. There are thousands of abduction stories and millions of cases where people have seen UFOs flying about in the sky. Countless people have reported crop circles that have just appeared with no apparent explanation. Millions of people have reported the existence of aliens. but most people disregard it as mere conspiracy, and it's unfortunately not taken seriously. But this is a reality that is occurring right under our nose. Aliens are not some kind of creation from sci-fi movies. Sci-fi movies are actually telling you what these creatures look like and what their plans are. Now I've got great news for you guys. I've compiled videos of abduction stories, so I need you to listen and observe, and you come to your own conclusion. But have an open mind and expand your consciousness.
We're talking today with Harvard University psychiatrist John Mack, who studied the cases of about 100 people, at least, who claim that they've been abducted by aliens. One of Dr. Mack's patients, Randy, here says his abduction occurred while he was awake. He is here with his sister, Linda, who says she too has been abducted since childhood. Since what age, do you remember?
5.
5 years old. And at 5 years old, what happened? So, some of what Dr. Mack described earlier here?
Right. I had a I consciously remembered my experience when I was 5, but I had bits of it that were missing. And what I remember is that through my wall came some beings around my bed, and I ran between them and ran out of the room into my mother's room to hide from them. And what happened is they followed me in there, and that's the last I remember of it. However, it's interesting because after that, I never told anybody about that, and I just buried it in the back of my mind. And me and my brother, we never even spoke about it until the last few years.
Why, Randy?
I first told my mom and dad when I was 10 years old, something happened, and I told my mom and dad.
Do you remember when he told you? You're Randy's mom. What did he tell you? Stand up, please.
Back about a couple years ago, my daughter was living at a distance away from home, and she had picked up the book Communion, and she said it disturbed her. So I tried to get a connection.
Which daughter, Glinda?
Glindy. And so I read the book, and my son happened to walk in for dinner, and my husband and I were both there, and I said, "Geez, this is so stirring." And he said, "Well, don't you remember when I was 10 years old?" And it was like it was put way in the back of our mind. And we both said, "Oh, yeah." And we remember him coming up to our room.
And saying?
And saying there was a spaceship outside, and there were little guys around his bed, and they put the dog to sleep, which sounds bizarre. Now...
Oh, a little bit more than bizarre,
does.
yeah. Yeah.
But,
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
but, so my husband went outside.
So when he told you at 10, you said, "Yeah, right, honey"?
No, my husband went outside thinking it was probably an intruder. I settled, there wasn't an intruder, so we found. I settled him down for sleep, and we never thought another thing about it until...
There was or was not an intruder? I didn't hear you say.
There was not an intruder.
There was not an intruder.
That we were aware of.
So you told him that
So I'm sure
it's in his imagination.
I don't even remember telling him that.
What do you remember, Randy?
That's pretty much it. But I mean, I ran up to their room completely terrified because they had put me out for a little over an hour, and when I came to, I ran out. First thing was I didn't know if I was going to get upstairs where my mom and dad's room where it was. I mean, it was that kind of fear, and yeah. I have a hard time with this.
Why?
Because I don't want to believe it.
This creature is about 3 feet tall. It looks for all the world like a child who is on the last stages of dying of malnutrition. It looks exactly like this, and it has a strange smell, which once you smell it, you shall never forget it. This creature is known by the Zulu-speaking people of South Africa as a mantindane. The word mantindane comes from the verb ntinda, which means to abuse, to fiddle with, and to torture by interfering with the victim's genitals and other private parts. This is an exact description of the Matindan. It does exactly that. For hundreds of years, even mighty nations such as the Zulus, even powerful warrior nations such as the Botswanas and Xhosas lived in mortal fear of these creatures.
Now I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, why are aliens abducting us? What is the purpose behind all of this? Well, the conclusion that I've reached, which seems interconnected with the one that Dr. Young Mae Chi reached, is that aliens show a desire to alter our reproductive nature. Now, extensive research shows that many alien species are incapable of reproducing. If you look at the greys, if you look at the reptilians, the ones that do most of these abductions, they're actually incapable of having children. Well, at least the only way that they can reproduce is through genetic manipulation. They cannot have children the way that we do. And another thing that seems quite interesting and strange, which I'll display a video about Credo Motua explaining this exact phenomenon. Aliens show a desire to alter our sexual orientation. Now I need you to expand your mind, because this story goes beyond what you have called reality. Check this out.
There are two sets of mountains. There is the Matobo Mountains, and then to the east of Zimbabwe there are the great mountains known as the Inyangani, the Weeping Moon Mountains. There, even now, people disappear without trace. Sometimes a person would disappear for several days and reappear a few days later, not knowing where he had been or where she had been. And white people have disappeared there. Black people in their thousands have disappeared there. It was there that I also went missing for 4 days in 1959 in one of the most traumatic experiences of my life.
What happened?
Well, it's a long story, sir. My teacher, Elizabeth Moyo, had sent me to get a special herb which grows only on the foothills of those mountains. It was just an ordinary day like any other, just beautiful day like this one outside here. And I love the African wilderness. I'm at home in the bush, especially in the days when I was still in good health. I love the animals, I love their smell, and I love the smell of the vegetation. And I was looking for this herb when all of a sudden a bright blue mist fell all around me. It took me some time to react to this strange thing. It was a hot day, and all of a sudden the temperature around me dropped. It was as if I was on the slope of a very cold mountain, but it was a warm day. And then the next moment, I was in what appeared to be a metal-lined tunnel, a caving tunnel, and I was lying on what looked like a workbench, a very large workbench of some kind. You know, an iron table which an engineer or somebody working with metal would use for welding and cutting metal upon. But this workbench was very brightly polished. And there I was lying there with my trousers missing and only my khaki shirt, when I saw again through what appeared to be like blue mist, a number of moving objects, which at first I thought were dolls. And these objects were moving towards me. I noticed with mild surprise that they were very thin, short, human-like creatures with very, very large melon-shaped heads. The creatures had no noses, as human beings have. They had only small little holes on either side of where the nose would be, and their mouths were like knife cuts at the bottom of their faces. And these creatures were coming towards me. In color, they were gray, like certain types of fish, and they wore silvery gray garments which reached up to their necks and up to their wrists. I couldn't see whether they were wearing boots or not at that time. And while I was looking at these creatures, I suddenly was aware that something was above me, standing there, and I looked up straight into the face of one of them, a much taller one than the others. And this creature was wearing a garment like a tight-fitting overall without any buttons or anything, which reached up to its neck, but its wrists were bare. I noticed that the creature had very long fingers. Its fingers had and each of its fingers had an extra joint, and it ended in a claw, a black claw like that of a chicken or a certain kind of bird, and that its thumb was not here, but here in the middle of the hand. And this thing was standing above my head and looking down at me, and I was looking at its eyes, which were very strange indeed. It was as if it was wearing plastic goggles over its eyes. I could see its eyes inside these tinted goggles, and it had holes on either side here, but it had no nose as I have. Its jaws were very small, and its mouth was a slit with tiny little scale-like things where its lips should be. And the creature carried a horrible smell on it. I can't describe that smell. It was a metallic, chemical smell, which seemed to combine the smell you would smell when somebody is burning brass or copper, and a very ugly chemical smell, these two smells combined. And this creature was looking down at me. I was frightened, but I could not move. And the next thing I knew was a terrible pain on my left thigh. It was as if somebody had just stabbed me right to the bone. I screamed and I tried to jump away, but my body was inactive. I could not move. I was not tied to any chain. I was not chained to the top of this table. There was no belt tying me, but I could not move my body. And when I looked down at what was happening, I found that one of the shorter creatures had driven something very painful into my left thigh. And then, while I watched, horrified, the creature pulled out this thing, and I saw that it was like a pencil made of shining metal, with what appeared to be a flexible cable at the back. And before I could do anything, sir, my head was seized by the creature above me. It caught me on either side of the head like this. And then a third creature drove something into my right nostril here. It was as if I had been shot. The pain was so terrible, sir, that I screamed and screamed. Blood filled my mouth, blood spurted out of the nostril, and the creature did not seem to care. I was stupefied. The pain was so intense, so terrible. And then, quietly, brutally, the creature pulled out the thing that it had stabbed me in the nose with, and blood flowed into my mouth, out of my nostril, and I was choking. And then the big creature coldly turned my head this way, so that blood came out of the mouth, and which gave me some kind of relief. And after what seemed like an eternity of pain, the creature brought something out of somewhere which looked like an old-fashioned tea strainer in appearance, and it put this thing close to my nose. And then I seemed to drift away, and the pain subsided. You know, sir, it was torture so intense that even now I can't describe it. And then something else happened. A fourth creature started rummaging between my legs, and it pulled out my organ of manhood and stuck something into that. It was very strange, but I wasn't feeling any pain now. But I could feel the flexible cable moving inside me, right into my body. And then, I can't describe it. It was as if my seed was being sucked out by this small, bright, flexible cable. And then the creature just pulled it out. I screamed and I cried and I screamed, but I could not move. And then something happened which to this day still amazes me. After the creature had pulled out the flexible cable from my organ, the creature just stood there looking at my organ. And I was so terrified that I urinated and accidentally urinated against the chest of the creature. It jumped away as if I had shot it, and it stumbled backwards. But its face didn't show any expression. Its mouth didn't even open, but the way the creature reacted, trembling all over, it was as if I had really hit it, but it was wearing this kind of garment. And after that, I was left alone, except for the big creature which stood to my right side this time, with its arms folded, looking down at me. And then, while I was looking at this creature, trying to appeal to it, no pain anymore, no pain, please, I was pleading. Pictures suddenly flooded my mind. Pictures of buildings sunk in a red lake of water. Buildings rotting away, buildings that appeared as if they had been bombed, and cities sunk in terrible mud, trees sticking out like rotten ghosts, trees without leaves, without branches, sticking out of the mud as if they had been poisoned. I saw visions of this. And then, through an entrance which I had not seen before, came a strange and terrible beings. It was exactly like this. It was tall, made entirely of metal, with burning eyes and a snout. It didn't do anything. It just moved and came to stand at my left side. It didn't touch me or anything like that. It just stood there, making a strange humming sound. Wow, 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 like that. And then, sir, from behind this metal creature, there appeared another creature. It was so radically different from the grey creatures in that it looked exactly like an earthly human being. It had a pink skin like that of a white woman. It had golden hair, and its ears were definitely pointed like those of an animal. Its eyes were slightly slanting. They were pale, pale blue, and never once did they blink. It was like this, nude, and there was a tail-like appendage at its back, which was very visible as it walked away after it had done to me what it did. What this thing did, it climbed over me and made love to me. And I noticed that unlike normal women, its breasts were set too high in its chest, and they were very, very hard in appearance. And that here, the pubic hair as well as the hair in the armpits was a fiery red, as if it had been dyed. And this thing didn't even blink. Its eyes were just like this, looking at you as if there was no liquid in the eyes. Just an unblinking, terrible stare. And it was a small creature, about the size of a 16-year-old girl. But it was very, very heavy as it sat on top of me. And there was no emotion in that whole nonsense. There was no, I just... And then the creatures took me out of that room after the metal creature and this pink creature had gone. This creature took me out of that room, assisted by another one. And they pushed me along a corridor which curved slowly in that direction, towards my right. And there I was shown many things which even today I don't understand. I was shown little versions of this creature swimming in huge cylinders made out of what looked like glass, in a pinkish liquid, like ugly little frogs inside the liquid. They looked like like aborted human fetuses. They were very, very terrible and disgusting. And then we came to another room, and there I saw a number of people undergoing the same torture that I had undergone. One particular person whom I passed very close to was a white man, definitely a European, with a yellowish beard and mustache and long, straggly blood-crusted hair. This man looked into my eyes and I looked into his eyes, and we were so close we were as I went past him. Then, to cut a long story short, I found myself in the bush again. But I was wearing only my shirt. My boots were gone, and so was my trousers. So I took off my shirt and wore it around my waist as a loincloth. And I started traveling, not knowing really in which direction I was going. Then I came to a track, and I walked along that. And some time later, I saw people coming towards me. It was a group of young men and young women, Mashona people, and they were going to a trading store I later learned. I asked them where Elizabeth Moyo's homestead was, and they directed me to it. But they kept a safe distance away from me. And later I learned why. I was carrying a horrible, non-human smell upon me. When at long last I came to Mrs. Moyo's village, all the dogs in that place went hysterical. They came at me in a pack, wanting to tear me to pieces. And only the villagers managed to save my life there. Mrs. Moyo asked me where I had been, and I said I did not know. And then she said, I know you had been taken by the little ones. I said, yes. I cannot understand. She said, you must not try to understand. You were chosen by the gods as a living sacrifice. So don't even try to talk about this. But how could I not talk about it? I wanted to understand what had been done to me, by whom and why. Even now, sir, I still want to understand what it was all about. And many years later, I met a remarkable white woman, Elizabeth Clara, a famous South African woman who had worked for British intelligence during the war, and who, we are told, had been impregnated by a being from the stars, Akon. I asked Elizabeth what was the meaning of the strange thing which was done to me, because since that time I had come across many black people, well over 200, who had been through the same torture as I. I had come across many black as well as Cape-colored women who had been mysteriously impregnated by the same creatures that I had gone through the hands of. And let me tell you one other interesting thing, sir, before I forget. About a year after I had underwent this terrible experience, I was walking along Jeppe Street in Johannesburg delivering parcels when a white man shouted at me to stop. I stopped. I thought he was a policeman wanting to arrest me for some reason. And when I tried to produce my identity document, the white man said, listen, I don't want your nasty word, passbook kefa. I said, then sir, what do you want, boss? He said, listen, where did I see you? Where did I see you? I said, I don't know, boss. But he looked very familiar to me. And then he said, listen, don't bullshit me, man. Where did I see you? Where did you and I meet? Then I said to him, I saw you in Rhodesia, in a certain place. You were lying on a table. If I had hit that white man with a fist, he would not have reacted the way he did. He went pale, almost dirty gray in appearance, and he turned away with a terrible, dirty word, and he walked away. His eyes were filled not with anger, sir, but with pure, naked terror.
Astonishing story.
Yes. But there is more, sir. There is more, because I still want to know what was done to me. Say, one day you and I must talk more, in greater depth than now. I would like to tell you that since that time, I have found that I know things that a man of my standard of education shouldn't know. These hands, and those who know me can confirm this, these hands not only have made these sculptures using ancient African metal casting secrets. These hands, believe it or not, can make guns and working jet engines. And one day I wish you to come back to South Africa and I will show you one of these things. I know things which I shouldn't know, and it started at that time. Now, you see, sir, I want to know, what am I? Since that terrible time, my life as a man was really messed up. And one day let me tell you, sir, since that time, I have become a very confused creature. It's embarrassing, really. But since that terrible day, I became bisexual, which to me as an African is very, very disgusting. Since that time, my mind doesn't seem to be my own. I think about things that a man like me shouldn't bother himself about. I worry about people. It's sickening, sir. I have ruined my life because of worrying about people. I feel that I want to take every human being on this earth by the shoulders, shake them roughly and say, listen, Pastor, there is more to this earth than you think. Sir, I have seen the chitaup. I have smelt them. I have had personal experience of these. And there are people who claim that these creatures are gods. There are people who claim that these creatures are experimenting on us.
Now, if that story did not blow your mind, I don't know what else will. But let's go back to Dr. Young Mae Chi's lecture. So there's one interesting key point that he mentioned, is that throughout all the abduction stories, he has found out that there are 4 extraterrestrial species that seem commonplace in all these stories. Now, personally, I think there are way more extraterrestrial species out there, but he has categorized them into 4 extraterrestrial species that are involved in the abduction of human beings and also interbreeding with us. Now, again, expand your mind, because this is something that goes beyond your reality. So now the first species that he claims that is involved in all of this mess are the insectoids. So the insectoids are described as looking like insects, like ants or praying mantis. They seem like they have some kind of genetic relationship with the insects within our planet. And then we have the second species, and these are described as having scaly skin and eyes like a snake. So the closest representation that I could find to this are the reptilians. Then the next species were described as being small and grey. Now, of course, this is pertaining to the greys, which are the most commonly described species in abduction stories. And then we have a tall and bold species that he claims also are involved in the abductions. And I believe these ones were spoken about in the movie Prometheus. They are the Archons. And according to Dr. Young Mae Chi, the insectoids are the ones that rule over the other species. But it's also known that the reptilians are the ones that have been in control of planet Earth for not hundreds but thousands of years. And if you know about David Icke, Children of the Matrix, he speaks about this a lot, that the people in power, the politicians that we know, some celebrities as well, are actually reptilians in disguise, that they're able to shapeshift, pretend to be human, but deep down inside, they are not. And they've been abducting people for experimental purposes and for the purposes of genetically modifying the human species. Now, let's go deeper as to why this is all occurring. Why are they abducting us? It can't only be for the sole purpose of interbreeding with us. There must be a deeper reason too. So according to Dr. Young Mae Chi's lecture, a lot of this stuff is involved with climate change. So if you have a look at this graph, this is the greenhouse gases that we've been emitting throughout a specific timeline. We've got carbon dioxide, we've got methane, and we've got nitrous oxide. Now, as you can see, if you look at that chart, there's a specific period in which it literally spiked up. The greenhouse emissions spiked up. And according to Dr. Young Mae Chi, this spike occurred in 1950. This was when the emissions literally skyrocketed. And this, according to his hypothesis, was the reason why extraterrestrials came into our planet at this particular period. Now, there's another picture that I'd like to show you as well, which shows all the extraterrestrial events, the UFO events, the abduction events that occurred around 1950. Look at that. We've got the Los Angeles, 1942, Maury Island, the Roswell incident. Many of these are well-known incidences that have occurred around 1950. And apparently this was the period in which our climate had the most change. So when the Battle of Los Angeles that occurred on the 25th of February 1942, a strange-looking light appeared in the skies of Los Angeles, and then the US military gathered together and issued out airstrikes all across the strange light, and then nothing happened to this light. It was as if it was unaffected by all the airstrikes, as if it had some kind of force field that was protecting it. Next was the Roswell incident. I think many people know about this. In New Mexico, when a strange appearing UFO crashed in broad daylight, and the man that you see in the picture there was the one who gathered the artifacts. Next we have Bonnie and Betty Hill, who are an American couple who claimed to be abducted by extraterrestrials. Now I'm pretty sure many people don't know about this, but President Eisenhower had a meeting with extraterrestrials. Yes, you heard me correctly. He had meetings with extraterrestrials in 3 occasions, but I'm going to detail one, where there was a moment in time where he just randomly disappeared, and then the media and many people around him asked him, "Where were you?" And he said he went to go visit his dentist around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Now who does that? Now anyway, one of the whistleblowers said that they actually went to an Air Force base and they met with extraterrestrial beings, and they made an agreement, and the agreement was for the exchange of technology they would allow people to be abducted, and then that leads to World War II. Now many people don't realize that a lot of the environmental things that are going on right now, in terms of the pollution, in terms of the toxic chemicals, actually came from World War II. Are you listening to that? So a lot of the negative effects from climate change occurred from World War II. Now if you look at this is basically the prediction as to how much time we have in order to rectify all this toxic waste that we've placed into our planet. And we've got to the year 2040, May 2040 to be specific. And as of July 2012, we were on 394 ppm. So the threshold is 450 ppm. And we're nearly reaching that threshold. So things are really getting out of hand. So in many occasions, the US government and the Canadian government were invited to the Paris Agreement, but many times they declined because it was too financially taxing. But now they realized just how serious things were getting. So now with the Great Reset, and if you guys don't know about that, check out my video series about that. In the Great Reset, one of the plans is to reduce emissions by almost 80% globally. So Biden made a vow, he made the commitment and said that he was going to slash the greenhouse gas emissions in half by the year 2030. But is this all enough? Because according to the research, over 20 or 30% of our plant species and animal species will be eradicated from the planet by that year 2040 and moving on about. Are we truly experiencing the end of humanity as we know it? Could it be that the aliens are creating a hybrid species for this new Earth?
What I thought was maybe the world's going to end. Maybe they're telling us the world's going to end.
Why do you think they might want us to be scared?
Because because we don't look after the planet and the area properly.
Mm-hmm. And let me, is this an idea that you have had before, that we don't look after the planet properly in the air, or did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
When I had this experience.
Mm-hmm. And how did that idea come to you from this? This is a little hard, but try to be with me here, okay? How did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
I just felt all horrible inside.
You felt horrible. At what point did you feel that? When you saw the craft, or when you got home at night? Or
When I got home.
You had that horrible feeling when you got home?
Yes.
And say more about that horrible feeling, Lisa. What was it like?
It was like in the world, all the trees would just go down and there would be no air and people would be dying.
Mm-hmm. And those thoughts came to you, had you had those thoughts before this experience?
No.
No. And how did those thoughts come to you? Did they come to you from the craft or from...
From the man.
The man. And did the man say those things to you? How did he get that across to you?
Well, he never said anything. It's just that the face is the eyes.
What was the sense you got from those eyes?
He was interested.
I know there were two standing behind me. I could feel one here and one here. And they felt quite tall. They didn't feel small. I could feel the presence. I could feel them. And they were probably a foot or two taller than me. And when I was in this place, it was all white. All I could see, for as far as my eyes could see, were little plants, all in little pots. Millions of them, rows and rows and rows of plants going on for, as far as I could see, into the distance. So I don't know how big this place was, or...
Were they all kinds of different plants?
No, they're all exactly the same.
Oh,
all
right.
all about a foot high, all exactly the same. And as I was looking down, I did see there were some little beings, but they weren't people or anything, or they're tiny little things like this, like not much bigger than the plants, but really thin, and like those tiny little
Looked like
monkeys.
18 inches or 2 feet tall, perhaps.
Well, yeah,
What's that? Is
yeah,
it about
yeah.
2 foot? Yeah.
Well, they just looked dark, and I couldn't see features. They were just sort of shadows mainly, because they were quite far away. I just saw them. They were small, and I just heard a voice in my head, and I know it was the one on this side that spoke, and it was a man's voice in English. I remember, and he just said, "You can ask 2 questions." So of course I said, "Well, what's with all these plants here, and what's going on?" And the answer was, "These are for the new planet Earth," and that was all, nothing else. These are for the new planet Earth. And next of all, I remember we carried on walking. I don't even remember if I was walking, because I don't remember a floor. I don't know if I was floating. But I remember, I wasn't in my right mind, because I know I would have asked a lot more questions,
Yes,
or looked
yeah.
around, but it was either I was totally at ease and didn't need to ask because I already knew, or they have you under some sort of control that you can't actually ask.
Yeah.
I think probably that's...
So did you find
more like
yourself
it.
going down by these plants, or did you go elsewhere in the ship? Or
We just carried on walking, and we walked this way, and the plants were sort of going that way, but I didn't, as I was walking down, we didn't pass the plants, so I assumed we
Right.
went another direction. But it looked the same. It was still all white and still looked the same.
when they said to you about the new Earth, did that seem kind of normal?
It seemed very normal to me. I said, "Oh, okay," that kind of, not like, well,
As
what's
if
the
you
new
already,
Earth? Or,
as if you already had information.
yeah, as if I already knew, and it was totally acceptable, and it's for the new Earth, and okay, because I know in my right mind I would have said, "Well, what's the new Earth? Tell me more information. I want to know. I want to know," and I would have really asked, but you don't. You can't do that.
No, it didn't occur to you.
You can't. Well, it's not that it doesn't occur to you. You can't.
All right.
It's like you can't speak. Basically, you can't interact the way you would normally on a realistic level like this. So either they have you under some sort of trance or hypnosis, or you don't need to ask because you already know everything, and it's So they're the 2 options I'm left with. So I don't know.
And
which
what
one.
about the second question?
Second question, we carried on, and I just remember then there was people everywhere, but people weren't like the rows of plants, they were in rows, long ways, like this. And I don't know how far they went up, I didn't look, but I just remember the people next to me, in front of me.
Yes.
And I have their faces embedded in my mind. I can describe what they were wearing even.
Again, would you call them human?
Yeah, they were just like us. They were normal people. They were normal people, all wearing different clothes. Some were wearing, you know, long nighty kind of things. Maybe they were abductees, I don't know, but they were definitely humans. And none of them were talking. It was completely silent. And they seemed to be just all standing there looking straight ahead. And as I came up closer to this, I remember the one lady, she had long hair and a long white sort of gown to probably about here. So I remember her distinctly because I was right next to her. And as I came up behind her, I saw she was looking at a screen. The screen was just, I mean, it wasn't attached to anything, and you couldn't see it from different angles. I could see it.
So were there lots of little
they
screens?
were all, yeah, they were all
individual
They were all
screens?
looking at screens.
All individual ones?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Tiny, like probably...
Like on Virgin Atlantic?
Maybe, yeah, like a 14-inch, but they weren't even physical things because you couldn't see them from up there, and I couldn't see them
Almost
from
like a holographic.
Could be like a hologram, yeah. Could you see it? And I looked at the screen over this lady's shoulder, and the image, they were all being shown images. I don't know if they were all the same, but the one I saw was just beautiful pictures of the earth, you know, the sea, fish jumping up, and lovely mountains and things like that. And it just sort of, like a black, just went across the screen.
Whatever we assume to be the aliens' intention is bound to be only speculative at this stage. But for the sake of setting a stage for further talks, let me exercise a little bit of this speculation. As to the way the production of hybrids can be a response to the impending demise of the human race, there are three possibilities. One of them, the first, is that they are producing hybrids as a seed species that will be or are already being relocated to another planet or to another world. Underlying the scenario is an assumption that in the end we all die and the Earth will be deserted forever. This scenario can answer the often raised question, where are all the hybrids produced so far? The answer, according to this scenario, is that aliens have transported them to another star or to another dimension where they can and are assimilating and flourishing. One drawback of this scenario, however, is that although environmental crisis may inflict serious damage to the life-supporting capacity of the Earth, the planet may still retain some ability to rejuvenate itself after a certain period of desertification. It may be able to become a beautiful planet again, where life can prosper and evolve to an advanced stage. And perhaps the catastrophe may wipe out the present human species and other advanced, evolved animals, but surely it may not be able to eradicate all life forms on the Earth. This leads to the second scenario. Hybrids will become a new species which will gradually replace the human species while offering solution to the present problem. This scenario obviously rings David Jacobs' hypothesis, but the only difference is, in this case, the intervention is of a benign kind. Hybrids will adapt to human society, visibly or invisibly, and devise ways to solve the present environmental problem. The process of solution will include setting of technological innovation, exercising political leadership, and restructuring the global economic and financial system. Yet, this scenario has merit in that hybrids, as I said at the beginning, they can easily hide themselves among us, so they can do something for the good of ours secretly, and they look quite similar to us. However, if this scenario is to be true, given the pace of global warming that is maximally stretching the self-sustaining capacity of the Earth, around by now there must be visible influence of these hybrids on major processes of world economy and politics. However, we do not have any signs whatsoever such development yet. No distinctive group of strange humans so far have been identified who possess very special intellect and distinctly future-oriented political vision, together with financial power large enough to stop the climate change. In fact, what we are seeing at the moment is the world is actually moving towards the very opposite direction. So this scenario has its own limitation. The last scenario is aliens are producing hybrids as a new species that will repopulate the Earth, but only after the Earth is left deserted for a certain period of time. The hybrids will be brought down to the Earth again when the Earth ecosystem regains ability to support advanced life again. And this scenario improves on the drawbacks of the previous two scenarios. But it is not without its own weakness. According to James Hansen, again, it takes 10 years for atmospheric methane to turn into CO2, and about 1/3 of a carbon dioxide emission remains in the atmosphere after 100 years, and 1/4 still remain after 500 years. So therefore, it will take several hundred years or even several thousand years until the Earth's ecosystem becomes clean again after the extinction of advanced life forms. But do the hybrids have such a long life expectancy? And where will they be staying while all these things are taking place on the Earth? Spaceships look quite small, and I don't think they will be happy to stay there bumping into each other for an extended period of time. But there are solutions to these problems. While the Earth remains unable to support life, the hybrids can be relocated to another planet and proliferate there. Regardless of their life expectancy, they can maintain a sizable population through reproduction until the time is ripe on the Earth. Moreover, they have half-human gene, so what would all the genetic engineering have been about if they are not meant to come back to the Earth? So the third scenario has answers to all these questions. The real weakness is this: why will they go through the hassle of remigration to the Earth when they have happily settled in their own world? I accept that this protest is quite reasonable, and it sounds all the more so given that they have alien genes that undoubtedly will assist them to assimilate to a different planetary environment. We have a very little hint about aliens' intention, and these three scenarios are equally all plausible, or for the same reason, equally implausible. Whichever scenarios you might prefer, they have all one common assumption: the impending demise of human civilization. And this is one of the likely outcomes of the present development of the environmental crisis, and possibly aliens decided that human race do not have any hope. That should not be our immediate concern. Our immediate concern should be whether this beautiful planet will turn into another this due to our carelessness and stupidity. I think we must act now, and if we act now, then we can save ourselves. Not only can we save ourselves, but also we can prove to aliens that they were wrong in calculating our technological prowess, but also wrong in judging about our moral capacity. After all, I believe the human race may not have that foolish and that stupid and that bad. Let's hope for that together. Thank you.